with that, we are jumping into game number 1 of the first match of the day. Johns Hopkins. Demon Handlock, as we've seen. And that's a Tempo Mage, and that is not that great of a starting hand.
That's definitely not what you want to see. Since Handlock never plays any minions early, pretty much, you definitely want to start the game with your own minions instead of reactive spells like Frostbolt. So, pretty unfortunate there.
Yeah. So the guys from Johns Hopkins, each player has their own like specialty classes. So Harrison is the resident Warlock and Mage expert, Kunal is the Druid and Rogue expert, and Eric is the Warrior Hunter expert. So I believe that should be Harrison or H. Jeong controlling that Mage deck. Maryland, on the other hand, they have sort of the same way, but not quite as specific of classes for their expertise.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Double Watcher, it's pretty good against Mage, especially Temple Mage, because Watcher can, go into Mirror Entity to sort of
yeah, it's always nice to have an Ancient Watcher just so you can proc the Mirror Entity. Even if it's not actually a Mirror Entity, you kind of have to always respect the Seeker, especially coming out of Mad Scientist or just when your opponent plays a Seeker. Most of the time it is Mirror Entity, so it's kind of hard to play anything except something you're not too scared of. A nice little hand. The big thing is Maryland does have the Twilight Drake, so they do have at least a 4-drop. It's good to have as many 4-drops as possible here, especially with the coin. That way you can say Twilight Drake followed by either another Twilight Drake or Void Caller. That's probably your ideal start, especially if you can combine that with a random Watcher or a Molten Giant. So this hand's pretty perfect so far. For Johns Hopkins, they do at least pick up a Mad Scientist here, giving them at least some way to put on some pressure, and also Mad Scientist, really good card because it's not really vulnerable to something like Dart Bomb. You'll still get the value from the Secret. One of the best cards in the game right now. Yeah.
The rest of their hand, though, not that great. Flame Cannon is pretty good, but it can really only chunk one of the big threats that Maryland's going to put out. Going to take off half of a Mountain Giant's health or about half of a Twilight Drake's health, so it really only dents. What are your thoughts on this matchup, the Tempo Mage versus Handlock matchup overall?
This matchup, Tempo Mage generally has two main ways to approach this. One is with a very aggressive opening and going for a very early kill. Hopefully, early on in the game, there might not be Moltens. Also, even if there are Moltens, if they get a strong enough opening, some of the minions don't actually even die to Hellfire. So Flamewaker is a minion that doesn't die to Hellfire. If you get a fast start, followed by some burn, you can close out the game. The other way is to take it slow, and going into the pretty late game turns, don't get the Warlock too super low for the Molten Giants, and eventually win the game through cards like Archmage Antonidas, Dr. Boom, and Ronin, especially the combo Ronin plus Archmage or Ronin plus Flamewakers. So yeah, this game seems to be definitely taking the approach to the latter one, going for the forced to go for definitely the slower one.
Yeah, with lots of spells in hand and double Mad Scientist as an opening. Not very strong creatures, but are a lot of value in those two cards. And they did have a way to cut off the Twilight Drake there, but really want to try and hold on to that Fireball, because a lot of times, as you mentioned, burn spells are really needed to close out the game against Handlock if you're a Tempo Mage deck.
Yeah. One important things for Maryland is for them to continue drawing into more threats. They did go ahead and tap after playing the Twilight Drake, or tap before rather. They do need to pick up more Twilight Drake, but for the next turns, I could see them doing a defensive move like Ancient Watcher and Sunfear, maybe even something like Mad Scientist first. So a chance to get that Mirror Entity, and then playing Ancient Watcher and Sunfury here.
No threat picked up for Maryland. They can opt to, kill one of these Mad Scientists and proc it with Ancient Watcher. They tap and don't really find an answer. So
seems like only 2 damage worth. Certainly okay to go ahead and tap on turn 4 and play the Watcher instead of playing the Sun Fury. the big difference is this move is a lot of it makes sense because Maryland's still looking for another bomb right now, and they don't have one in their hand. So the life tap kind of helps finding something else. So
Johns Hopkins has a hand full of spells. It's all spells.
yeah, so it's really important for Johns Hopkins here to actually try to, like, even though it's weird, kind of protect this mana worm because, or sorry, this mad scientist. This mad scientist is their only attacking creature. So once this mad scientist dies, they're gonna have nothing left, and it'll just, be the turns where they just pass the turn or try to move. So I kind of do expect them to make a move that would protect this mad scientist. Maybe something like fireballing the Twilight Drake here.
Yeah. Looks like they're gonna take their chances, go for the flame cannon, but oh no, this is not going well for Johns Hopkins. They can take out the Ancient Watcher, but that's not really that big of a deal. I guess that potentially could be contributing to a wall later on in the game, but a lot of times when you're playing a Tempo Mage deck, you don't care too much about a wall because by the time it comes down, your opponent should already be in range enough for you to burn them out with spells. So Maryland does pick up a nice threat here. They can tap and play Mountain Giant if they so choose. Could be a little risky. They are getting a little bit low at least.
Yeah, at this point, Maryland should feel safe this turn developing another big threat because from their perspective, they don't realize that Johns Hopkins, all they have are damage spells. It could be a lot of 7 drops, like Dr. Boom, Marchmate, Antonitis, and Ronin. So it makes a lot of sense to put on a lot of pressure right now. Even if it is a whole handful of burn, without any minions to follow up, there's no way you're taking 16 damage in one turn from burn here, and you still have Molten Giant and Anti-Kill Bot. So it shouldn't be easy to recover your life if Johns Hopkins decides to go for just the burn strategy.
Yeah.
And the Mountain Giant definitely just starts putting on the pressure, developing a board lead before the important turn 7 of the other players.
Yeah. Well, if Johns Hopkins picks up another fireball, they can do 18 damage on turn 10.
Yeah.
With the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, but I feel like by then it's probably a little bit too late because
this game's gonna be over. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mountain Giant. There's 12 damage on board for Maryland, so that's quite a fast clock, and also there's the healing left over. So
yeah.
Just gonna go ahead and freeze the giant to prevent that 8 damage. Maybe setting up for a flame strike with this move. Definitely setting up for a flame strike with this move.
It's pretty telegraphed. I mean, maybe Maryland could assume that they probably wouldn't Frostbolt unless they had Flame Strike, especially since they've been holding on to a lot of cards.
Yeah.
Maybe just to block that 8 damage would be a possibility, but it doesn't seem that likely. So they are going to be able to proc that second Mirror Entity with Ancient Watcher.
I'd like to see Argus on the... Yeah, exactly. This helps so much because board control, like the greedier, the stronger move plays. If you don't count Flame Strike as a card, the stronger play would be to drop the Twilight Drake after. It'd probably put more power on the board, but here, because they're so far ahead already, it's more about playing around with specific spells at this point, not just make your general strongest move. And especially with how telegraphed this Flame Strike is, just to push your 2 big minions outside of range of that Flame Strike, especially since Flame Strike isn't something like Blizzard where it frees your board. Flame Strike, if it doesn't kill these giants and Twilight Drake, it doesn't actually do anything pretty much. They're still taking 14 damage next turn. So
yeah, they could ping it off the following turn, but by that time it's too late.
Yeah, it's way too late at that point.
Yeah. So this turn they have the option of going with something like a Flame Waker Mirror Image to try and block that damage, but that ends up being pretty weak to something like a Hellfire or a Shadow Flame on the Ancient Watcher. So it looks like what they're going to do is just trying to block as much damage as possible.
Yeah, this kind of game is eventually, so this is again setting up for the Flame Strike next turn. Unfortunately, like the problem with it's kind of they're trying to make the best out of the situation, but the issue is Handlock's always going to have other minions to play that have more than 4 health, and when you Flame Strike, you generally can't do anything else in the same turn. So something like dropping a Molten Giant here, or even dropping a Twilight Drake is definitely going to kind of play around with Flame Strike. We do see that Johns Hopkins has a Mirror Image, which will help a lot because Flame Strike plus Mirror Image might be able to buy them some time needed, but still just, playing this kind of grindy game against Handlock when they have more threats than you, more cards than you, and playing from behind, so
Yeah.
lack of tempo.
And they've had to use a lot of their burn, just to stop the bleeding on the board. They had to use both frost bolts just to. They've thrown both frost bolts into this mountain giant.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of a rough road for them so far. They still might be able to pick up some more burn, but again, it feels like it's going to be too late.
Yeah, you really need an aggressive start with Tempo Mage in this matchup. It's really hard to play from behind when you're playing against things like Twilight Drake and Void Caller on turn 4, and all you have are smaller minions that don't trade up very well.
Yeah. So it looks like Source's Apprentice Flame Strike is going to be the play here. They do leave the Mountain Giant still up on the board, but not really much of an option here because they don't have a way at all to take out the Molten Giant. And Mirror Image can block this damage, but it's going to be tough. Still be weak to Hellfire. I guess that would bring the Molten Giant down to 1 health, but Johns Hopkins would be very close to dead if that were the case.
Johns Hopkins has a really cute little board with these 2 Ancient Watchers. I feel like this game, they're pretty much stuck into the actual Ancient Watcher mode, just watching the game. Unfortunately, there's no way for Mage to activate these Watchers. At best,
there is. If they have a Clockwork Gnome, they can get a Rusty Horn.
Yeah.
Or if they have Toshly. Toshly's a pretty popular card in Tempo. Not a popular card, but it's a card that exists in some Tempo Mages.
I would be pretty surprised if there's no Mirror Image coming down here. It blocks a potential 8 damage. So I feel like that's as good as it's ever going to get.
Yeah, 0 mana heal bot, basically. That doesn't give you a body. That doesn't give you a 3/3.
Oh, nice. Really good top deck here, actually. Because of the Mal'Ganis in the hand, this Void Caller is exactly what they wanted. So it comes down here as how safe does Maryland want to play, because the strongest play here would be something like drop Twilight Drake and the Void Caller. The problem with that is you're still leaving up the Sorcerer Apprentice that represents 3 damage. So you've got 13. If you count for enough burn in the Mage's hand, it's definitely possible you die. There's, I think, 1 Fireball already accounted for, or not. I'm not sure, but
no Fireball has been used so far this game.
So some of the things have been accounted for, but something like double Fireball plus Ping would kill you. So I think I would prefer to see some kind of defensive move. Yeah. Did go ahead and play the taunt, and
this is super safe. They build a wall and they make sure that they take out that Sorcerer's Apprentice. So
one of the interesting things here is they decided to go for the Twilight Drake over the Void Caller here. One of the reasons could be because this is a turn where they played 3 cards in your hand. This is the deck is called Handlock for a reason. That's their deck basically benefits from having more cards in their hand. It's the minions Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant. They get stronger depending on how many cards. So if Maryland was going to play 3 minions here, that's a good reason to play the Twilight Drake before kind of emptying your hand. But another reason, another alternative play would have been to play the Void Caller and taunt up here, because having the Void Caller taunted up for the Mal'Ganis is an extremely strong play as well.
Yeah.
Either way, I feel like they're pretty far ahead.
Yeah, at this point, it really doesn't matter too much what they do. Wow!
Second Fireball. Definitely, it's kind of an out, but I guess some of these Fireballs just have to be used for removal.
Yeah.
If you do save your Fireball here, you're basically just losing the game to Heal Bot.
Which, with double Heal Bot, usually in most of these Demon Handlock decks, it's going to be hard for you to dodge that for the rest of the game. Yeah, Johns Hopkins just doesn't really have much stuff. They do have double Flame Waker, so later in the game you can make some crazy stuff happen with that if you get some cheap spells. But
Handlock's a class that's actually, unless you get an early Flame Waker and you snowball from there, going into the late game, it's not a class that's extremely vulnerable to Flame Waker just because of how much sheer life their minions have.
Unless the Flame Waker wants to go face.
Yeah, in general, it's just so good at soaking up Flame Wakers off 4/9, things like Void Caller. Just go ahead and play it safe, taking over the board more and more. Eventually you just lock out this game as Handlock, so just doing everything pretty much correctly here.
Depending on whether or not they want to play the Sunfear Protector, but it really doesn't do much of anything. The extra damage doesn't give them lethal. There's not any minions on the board where they need a bigger wall.
I mean, I think people aren't... So one of the things is you could definitely just... You want to really recognize the situation you're in. I would definitely like these, even though it probably wouldn't matter, these definitely are like kind of small misplays. There's no tempo mages that are realistically gonna run 2 flame strikes. 1 flame strike is common, 0 flame strikes is common, but almost never 2. So having something just playing Sun Fury here, because you have to recognize in this position that you're ahead, you should be the one pressuring. One of the only ways you can lose is to a slow, Ronin plus Archmage or something like that.
Yeah.
So you do have incentive to pressure. And another thing is, you're almost never going to run in a situation where you lose board control at this point. It's only if they can pull off a crazy chain of combos. So it's better to develop the Sun Fury, not really for the taunt, but just as another 2-3 beater. Another thing is they do have another Defender of Argus anyways that they really want to taunt. So I would like to see them just throw out more threats and put on more pressure, recognize the situation they're in.
Johns Hopkins, they're going to realize that holding on to this Fireball is probably going to be their only way that they're going to win. With Healbot, it's probably not even going to be a win condition. To be honest, I don't even know if they run Ronin in their deck. I think we saw Johns Hopkins play Temple Mage last week, and never saw Ronin once. So
yeah,
it might be a possibility, but I just don't think it's a card that they run. And without it, I don't know if they're going to have any way to climb back and take a win in this first game.
Maryland also has a big game hunter in the back, so if they ever do run in a situation where Dr. Boomer Run comes down, they can definitely afford to big game hunter it. Ooh, Owl, it's not a bad card to see. Represents forward damage for lethal at some point.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to play it safe and Healbot this turn. They know that there's only 1 Fireball left.
Yeah. And this is kind of, again, like another turn where they're playing very slow. They decided to tap here instead of playing something like the Healbot and Defender of Argus. Defender of Argus actually represents a lot of power. It's a total of something like a 4 or 5 in power, and 2 attack has charge effectively. So, like playing a Defender of Argus definitely puts your opponent on very quick clock over the Healbot.
Yeah,
I mean, they could have done both last turn. So.
Yeah, it seems like they've been floating Johns Hopkins around like the same amount of health for a long time. They're giving them a lot of time to draw into outs.
Yeah.
By not really pressuring, not really putting additional things on the board, just making sort of the safe play and hoping that it pieces together by the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things is to recognize, your kind of your most important resource in the game, right? There's generally 3 big things resource in Hearthstone. Basically, like tempo, value, and life. Those are kind of what you balance around Hearthstone.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes you'll play sacrifice 1 to gain the other part of it. So it's like a triangle, how it works. I feel like they're pushing for value too heavily and not tempo enough.
Well, they do decide to take out the Ancient Watcher instead of the Void Caller, which is a good plan, because you don't really want to see what's on the other side of that. You always want to, well, not always. A lot of times you want to let the Handlock player trade in with the Void Caller, just because unless it's a Doom Guard, they don't usually get immediate value out of it. Whereas if you trade into it, especially late in the game, the chance that they have a demon is really high. And if you kill it on your turn, then that means they get to use it immediately the next turn. It's something like a Mal'Ganis and ends up being 9 damage, so.
You almost never want to kill Void Caller on your turn unless you have a pretty good read otherwise, or you're kind of forced to with no other good play.
Or it's like super early in the game, they haven't really tapped much, and because then it's only more likely as the game goes on that they'll draw into a demon. But yeah, a lot of times, especially when it's frozen, there's absolutely no incentive. Well, looks like this is going to be the beginning of the end. Johns Hopkins does have a Fireball to deal with this Mal'Ganis, but that's their last burn spell.
At this point, it's too little too late. Johns Hopkins is always playing from behind, and Tempo Mage has a very limited amount of ways to make a comeback against something as strong as Handlock.
Yeah.
You have maybe 1 Flame Strike.
They can get a sick Unstable Portal.
They're going to have to get a sick Unstable Portal. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
This Flame Waker.
All right, let's see what they get. This has to be good. Archmage. They have Archmage and Archmage Antonidas.
2 Archmages. One of them is named, though.
The other one's just
better one.
Generic Archmage.
Generic.
Archmage Bill.
Yeah, this should be lethal here.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And with that, University of Maryland, you can see, oh, wow, yawning, cracking his fingers.
The young eminence. The